"Mom's asleep. Take everything from the fridge." I heard my son Michael's voice from somewhere in my dreams, but I didn't wake up. I was too exhausted after 12 hours caring for Mrs. Johnson on the night shift. I didn't know that while I was fast asleep, my daughter-in-law Chloe was filling 4 enormous bags with all the food from my refrigerator. The nice cuts of meat I had bought with so much effort, the imported cheeses my neighbor Sarah had given me, the expensive wines I was saving for the holidays. Everything. Absolutely everything. And the worst part, my own son was helping her. When I woke up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the sun was streaming violently through my bedroom window. My body felt shattered, every bone ached. At 69 years old, these night shifts are killing me, but my Social Security check doesn't cover everything, and I need the extra money. I sat up slowly, feeling my stiff back and dry mouth. The house was strangely silent, the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl without knowing why. I put on my slippers and walked down the hall. The door to Michael and Chloe's room was open, the bed unmade, their things scattered everywhere as always. I got to the kitchen, thinking about making some tea and eating something before my shower. I was terribly hungry, the kind that makes your hands shake. I opened the refrigerator, and the world stopped. Empty. Completely empty. It wasn't just a few things missing. They hadn't eaten the leftovers. It was empty as if they had moved out, and no one had told me. The shelves were shining clean, without a single spot. Not a yogurt, not an egg, not a bottle of water. Nothing. My legs started to tremble, and I had to hold on to the doorframe. I thought I was losing my mind, that maybe the exhaustion was playing tricks on me. I opened the freezer. Empty too. The 5 pounds of beef I had bought 3 days ago, the whole chicken, the pork ribs I was saving for the Sunday stew, all of it had disappeared. I closed the door and opened it again, as if the act of closing it would make the food reappear. But no, still empty. I opened the pantry. The cans of tuna, the beans, the rice, the olive oil that had cost me $20, the cookies, the coffee, everything had vanished. My heart started beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. I ran to the other cabinet where I kept the wines. The 6 bottles I had been collecting for years, some given to me on past birthdays, others I'd bought on special sales. Empty. Only dust marked the place where they used to be. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking when I opened the cheese and cold cuts drawer. Nothing. The Manchego and Gouda cheese that Sarah had brought me from her trip, the prosciutto I had bought for special occasions, all gone. I sank into a kitchen chair, trying to process what I was seeing. A robbery? But the door was locked when I woke up. The windows, too. No signs of forced entry. Besides, they hadn't taken the television, or my old computer, or the few pieces of jewelry I have in my room. Just the food. All the food. I heard the front door open and the sound of shuffling feet. It was Michael. He walked into the kitchen with his head down, not looking me in the eye. He was 32 years old, but in that moment, he looked like a 10-year-old kid who had just broken something and didn't know how to tell me. "Mom," he said in a weak voice, "I need to talk to you." I stood up from the chair, feeling the rage start to rise in my throat. "Where is the food, Michael? Where is all the food from the refrigerator?" He stayed quiet, staring at the floor. His hands were trembling slightly, and his ears were red, just like when he was little, and knew he'd done something very wrong. "It was Chloe," he finally mumbled. She took it." "What do you mean, she took it? Where? Why?" My voice came out louder than I intended, almost a shout. Michael closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "To her parents' house. She said they don't have money for groceries this week, and that you have plenty, that you wouldn't notice a little bit missing." "A little bit?" I interrupted, feeling tears start to sting my eyes. "Michael, the refrigerator is empty. Completely empty. They didn't even leave an egg." "I'm sorry, Mom." I tried to stop her, but she said you didn't need that much, that you live alone, and her family is bigger. "I don't live alone. You two live here, in my house." The tears were already rolling down my cheeks. "And you helped her." The silence was all the answer I needed. My son, my only son, had helped his wife empty my refrigerator while I slept exhausted after working all night. While I was killing myself, working to pay the bills for this house where they lived for free. She filled 4 bags, Michael said in a broken voice. 4 big bags. She took the meats, the cheeses, the wines, everything she found. I told her it was too much, but I couldn't listen anymore. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, feeling like I was suffocating. I leaned against the wall in the hallway, trying to breathe. I locked myself in my room without another word. I couldn't look at him. I couldn't be in the same room with him without feeling like everything I had built, everything I had sacrificed, was collapsing on me like a house of cards. I sat on the edge of the bed, and the tears came uncontrollably, silently, burning my cheeks. I wasn't crying over the food. I was crying because my son had chosen that woman over me, because he had allowed her to steal from me while I slept after killing myself at work. Michael knocked on the door gently. "Mom, please, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," I answered, my voice hoarse. "Go away." I heard his footsteps move away down the hall, and then the door to his room close. I stayed there, sitting, staring at the wall, trying to understand how I had gotten to this point. 2 years ago, when Michael told me he was marrying Chloe, I was happy. I thought my son had finally found someone to make him happy, someone to build a family with. She was polite at family dinners, smiled a lot, called me Mom with that sweet voice. But when they came to ask if they could stay in my house while they saved for their own apartment, things started to change. At first, it was small things. Chloe would use my expensive shampoo without asking. She'd put on my perfume. She'd borrow my hair straightener and never return it. I didn't say anything because I thought it was silly, unimportant. Then she started using my night creams, the ones that cost me $50 and last me for months because I used them so carefully. She would go through them in weeks. When I mentioned it, she looked at me like I was cheap. "Oh, Mom, don't be like that. It's just cream." "You have so much," she told me with that smile that was starting to seem fake. So much. I had so much. Working night shifts at 69 years old, my knees aching every time I climbed the stairs. Barely sleeping 5 hours when I was lucky, all to have so much. So she could come into my house, live for free, eat my food, and now take even what I had bought with my own sweat. One day, I discovered she had borrowed my pearl earrings, the ones my mother gave me before she died. I found them in her room, tossed on her dresser among a pile of cheap makeup. When I asked her, she shrugged. "I saw them in your room and thought I'd borrow them. I was going to give them back. Chloe, those earrings have huge sentimental value for me. If you wanted to wear them, you should have asked me first." She rolled her eyes. "Oh, fine. I won't wear them again. God, you're so sensitive." Michael never defended me. When I tried to talk to him about his wife's behavior, he'd tell me I was exaggerating, that Chloe was young and still learning, that I needed to be more understanding. Understanding. I had to be understanding while she disrespected me in my own home. But this was different. This wasn't borrowing cream or earrings. This was walking into my kitchen while I slept and taking all my food, 4 full bags. The meats I had bought thinking about making stews for the whole week, the cheeses I was saving for when my friends came over for tea, the wines I had been collecting. She had taken it all to her parents' house, as if I were a supermarket she could just take from without paying. I got up from the bed and looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red and swollen, my hair a mess, my face marked by exhaustion. I looked old, I felt old, old and stupid for letting this go so far, for staying quiet so many times, for swallowing so many small humiliations, thinking I was keeping the peace in my family. I opened my nightstand drawer and took out my ledger. I flipped through the pages until I found what I was looking for. The last 3 months of expenses. $500 on groceries each month, $150 on utilities, $80 on gas, $70 on the internet that Chloe used all day to scroll through social media. It all came out of my pocket while they didn't pay 1 cent of rent, nor did they contribute to the household expenses. "We're saving for our apartment," Michael would tell me every time I brought up money. But they had been living with me for 2 years, and there was no sign of them leaving anytime soon. Every time I mentioned deadlines or dates, he'd change the subject or tell me they didn't have enough saved yet. Of course they didn't have money saved. Chloe bought new clothes every week. Michael had just upgraded his phone to one that cost $1,000. They went out to dinner twice a week. But contributing to the house where they lived for free? That, they couldn't do. I heard noises in the kitchen. I wiped my tears and left my room carefully. From the hallway, I could see Michael sitting at the table, his head in his hands. No sign of Chloe. She was probably still at her parents' house, enjoying the food she had stolen from my refrigerator, telling them some story about how I had too much and they had nothing. I walked into the kitchen and Michael lifted his head. His eyes were red, too. Good. Let him cry. Let him feel even a fraction of what I was feeling. "Where is your wife?" I asked in a cold voice. "Still at her parents'. She said she'd come back later, to get the cold cuts and the desserts." I froze. "What did you say?" Michael swallowed hard. "The desserts you had in the pantry, the caramel sauce and the sandwich cookies. She says they forgot them and she's coming back for them." Something inside me broke definitively in that moment. "She's coming back for the desserts." I repeated the words slowly, as if trying to understand a foreign language. "Your wife emptied my refrigerator, took all my food to her parents' house, and now she's coming back for the desserts she forgot." Michael said nothing. His gaze was fixed on the table, his hands clenched in front of him. I saw his jaw tighten, how he tried to find words to defend the indefensible. "Mom, I know it's wrong. Believe me, I know. But her parents really are going through a hard time and I'm not?" My voice came out like a whip. "You think I'm not going through a hard time, Michael? I work 12-hour night shifts at 69 years old. My knees hurt. My back hurts. I can barely sleep. And I do it so this house can keep running, so there's electricity, water, food, so you two have a roof over your heads without paying a cent. I know, Mom. I know, and I thank you for it every day." "You thank me," I laughed, but it was a bitter, humorless laugh. "You thank me by letting your wife rob me while I sleep." Michael stood up from the chair abruptly. "It's not robbing, she just what?" I confronted him, looking him straight in the eye. "Just borrowed the food without asking? Just took 4 full bags of food that I paid for with my money, with my work, without asking me? What do you call that?" He fell silent. The words got stuck in his throat because he knew I was right. He knew there was no way to justify what Chloe had done, but he still couldn't admit it out loud because that would mean betraying his wife. "Your grandparents are coming tomorrow," I said suddenly, remembering my father's call a week ago. "Your grandpa Arthur and your grandma Eleanor. They're coming from their town to spend the weekend with me. I was going to make them a special meal with those meats your wife took. I was going to open one of those bottles of wine I was saving for important occasions." I saw Michael turn pale. My parents adored him, but they were also people of very firm principles. My father, Arthur, is 92 but still a man of strong character, the kind who doesn't tolerate disrespect or injustice. He'd been in the military in his youth and still walked with that straight posture, that gaze that pierced right through you when he knew you'd done something wrong. "I can explain it to them," Michael muttered. "They'll understand that. That their grandson allowed his daughter-in-law to steal from his own mother? Yes, I'm sure they'll understand perfectly." I turned and walked to the pantry. There they were, the last scraps of food Chloe hadn't managed to take. A can of canned peaches, a half-finished package of butter cookies, a box of tea. I took the cookies and put them on the table. "This is what your wife left me. This is what I have to offer my parents when they arrive tomorrow." Michael came over and tried to take my hand, but I pulled it away. "Mom, please, let me fix this. I'll go to Chloe's parents' house and I'll bring everything back. I'll buy more food, whatever it takes. Just don't tell Grandpa and Grandma." I stared at him, my son, my only son. The boy I had raised alone after his father abandoned us when he was 5 years old. The boy I had worked 2 jobs for years so he could go to a good school, have decent clothes, so he never lacked for anything. And there he was, asking me to lie, to cover up, to keep swallowing humiliations to keep the peace. "No," I said simply. "No, what? I'm not going to lie to your grandparents. I'm not going to hide what happened. And no, you're not going to go get the food back, because that doesn't change anything. The damage is already done." Michael ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. "Then what do you want me to do? Tell me what you want, and I'll do it. I want your wife to return everything she took and apologize to me. I want you both to start paying rent and contributing to the expenses of this house." And I want you, if you're not willing to do that, to find another place to live." The words left my mouth before I could fully think them through, but as soon as I said them, I knew it was exactly what I wanted, what I should have demanded a long time ago. Michael looked at me as if I had slapped him. "You're kicking us out." "No, I'm setting boundaries. Something I should have done the day you arrived." Just then, I heard a car park in front of the house. I looked out the window and saw a taxi. Chloe got out of it, with 2 more bags in her hands and a smile on her face. She was humming a song, completely carefree, as if she hadn't done anything wrong. As if walking into my house and taking whatever she wanted was the most normal thing in the world. "Here comes your wife," I said in a flat voice. For the desserts, she forgot. Michael ran to the door. I followed from the kitchen, staying in the hallway where I could see but not be seen. I wanted to hear what he was going to say, how he was going to handle this. If, for once in his life, he was going to put me before her. Chloe walked in with the empty bags and a cheerful expression. "Honey, I'm back. My parents are so happy with all the food. My mom says you're a saint for thinking of them." She stopped when she saw Michael's face. "What's wrong? Why the long face?" "Chloe, we need to talk." "Talk about what?" "Oh, is your mom awake already?" "Well, it doesn't matter. I'll just explain it was for my parents, and that's that. She has her pension. She can buy more." She started towards the kitchen, but Michael stopped her, grabbing her arm. "My mom is furious, and she has every right to be." Chloe rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. It's not a big deal. It was just some food. Your mom always overreacts." I felt the rage surge in my throat again. I overreact? It was just some food? I stepped out of the hallway and stood in front of her. 4 bags, I said, my voice trembling with anger. 4 bags is not some food, Chloe. It's everything I had in my refrigerator. Everything I bought with my money, working night shifts that destroy my body. Chloe looked at me with that expression she had perfected, that mix of fake innocence and barely disguised contempt. "Oh, Mom, don't be like that. My parents really needed the food, and you always have a full fridge. I didn't think you'd mind sharing a little. You didn't ask my permission. You didn't ask me if you could take it. You came into my kitchen while I was sleeping after working all night, and you took everything. In what world is that okay?" She shrugged, as if I were making a scene over nothing. "Well, it's done now. We can't return it because my parents already started cooking with some of it. I promise I'll ask you first next time." "There isn't going to be a next time," I said firmly. Chloe laughed. She actually laughed, as if I'd told a joke. "Oh, Mom, don't be so dramatic." It was at that exact moment that I heard another car stop in front of the house. I peeked out the window, and my heart leaped. It was my father's car. An old Chevy, but spotless, which he cared for like a treasure. But they weren't supposed to arrive until tomorrow. What were they doing here today? I saw my father get out of the driver's side with that military elegance he never lost, despite his 92 years. My mother, Eleanor, got out of the other side, fixing her white hair with one hand while holding her purse with the other. "Your grandparents are here," I told Michael, feeling my whole body tense up. Chloe looked out the window and her smug expression faded a little, but she recovered quickly. "Perfect. I'll say a quick hello and then head back to my parents' place. I need to bring them the desserts." I looked at her, incredulous. After everything that had happened, after emptying my fridge, she still thought she was going to walk into my pantry and take more things. The audacity was so great it almost left me speechless. "You are not taking anything else from this house," I said, my voice low but firm. "Oh, please, I already told you my parents." The door opened before she could finish the sentence. My father entered first, with that straight posture and those piercing blue eyes that could still make anyone feel small when they'd done something wrong. My mother came in behind him, with her sweet smile and her hands full of bags. "Irene, honey." My mother came over to hug me. "We decided to come a day early to spend more time with you. We brought some things from town, those cheeses you like, and the bread that Mrs. Miller makes." My father kissed my forehead and then looked at Michael and Chloe. His expression hardened slightly. He had always had a special instinct for sensing when something was wrong. "Michael," he said in a grave voice. "Chloe, Grandpa, Grandma." Michael went to greet them, but I could see his hands were shaking. What a surprise to see you today. My father didn't answer. His eyes moved from Michael to Chloe, then to me. He knew me too well. He could see on my face that something had happened. The signs were all there. My eyes, swollen from crying, my tense posture, the heavy atmosphere that filled the house. "What happened?" he asked directly, no beating around the bush. "Nothing, Dad," I tried to say, but my voice betrayed me. It broke on the last word. "Irene, don't lie to me. I've known you for 69 years. I know when something has hurt you." He moved closer to me and put his large, rough hand on my shoulder. "What happened?" The tears returned to my eyes, uncontrollably. My mother dropped her bags on the floor and came over too, taking my hand in hers. "Honey, tell us," she said in that soft voice that had always comforted me since I was a child. I looked at Michael. He was shaking his head slightly, pleading with his eyes for me to say nothing. Chloe had frozen by the door, the empty bags still in her hands, the smile completely wiped from her face. While I was sleeping after my night shift, I began, and my voice sounded stronger than I expected. Chloe emptied my refrigerator. She took all the food to her parents' house, 4 full bags. The meats, the cheeses, the wines, everything. The silence that followed was deafening. My father stood completely still, but I could see his jaw clench, how his knuckles turned white as he balled his fists. My mother squeezed my hand tighter, her eyes wide. "She did what?" my father asked in a voice so low it was scarier than if he had shouted. "Grandpa, let me explain," Michael started, but my father held up a hand to silence him. "I'm not asking you. I'm asking your mother." He turned back to me. "Your daughter-in-law came into your kitchen while you were sleeping and stole your food." "I didn't steal anything," Chloe spoke for the first time, her voice defensive. "I just took some things to help my parents. They're going through a hard time," and my father spun towards her so fast that Chloe instinctively took a step back. He didn't touch her, didn't even raise his voice, but there was something in his presence, in the way he looked at her, that made her shrink. "You entered this house, your mother-in-law's house, the house where you live for free, and you took her food without permission," he asked with terrifying calm. Yes or no? Chloe looked to Michael for help, but he had lowered his head, unable to look anyone in the eye. "Yes, but..." "There are no buts." My father walked to the kitchen. We all followed. He opened the refrigerator and stared at the empty interior for what felt like an eternity. Then he opened the freezer. The pantry, the cabinets, all empty. He turned to Chloe with an expression I hadn't seen in years, not since that time when I was 15 and some boys had bothered me on the street. "My daughter," he said, his voice trembling with contained rage, "works night shifts at 69 years old. She wakes up with pain in her knees, in her back, she barely sleeps. And she does it to maintain this house, so there is food on this table, so her son and her daughter-in-law have a roof over their heads. And you repay her like this." "Mr. Arthur, I can explain. I don't want explanations. I want you to tell me where the food you stole is. I didn't steal it, I needed it for. Where is the food?" This time he did shout, and the sound echoed through the house. Chloe flinched. She had never seen my father like this with her. He had always been polite, respectful, even affectionate when she joined the family. But now he looked at her as if she were a complete stranger who had entered his house to harm his daughter. At my parents' house," she whispered. "Michael." My father turned to my son. "Take the keys to my car. You are going to go, right now, to your wife's parents' house, and you are going to bring back every last grain of rice they took from here. Do you understand me?" "Grandpa, some of it." "My parents already cooked it," Chloe tried to explain. "Then they can give you the money to replace it. I don't care how, but my daughter is going to have her food back." My father took out his wallet and handed several bills to Michael. "And if what they return isn't enough, use this to buy everything that's missing. Meats, cheeses, wines, everything your mother had." Michael took the money with trembling hands. "Yes, Grandpa." "And an apology?" my mother asked, her voice soft but firm, looking directly at Chloe. "Don't you think you owe Irene an apology?" Chloe opened her mouth, but what came out was not an apology. "This is ridiculous. It was just food. I can buy more and that's it. I don't understand why you're all making such a drama out of it." The silence that followed was worse than any shout. My father closed his eyes and took a deep breath, as if making a superhuman effort not to completely lose control. When he opened them again, he looked at Michael. "Your wife has just demonstrated that she doesn't have an ounce of shame or respect. You are going to get that food now, and when you come back, you are going to pack your things, and hers, and you are going to leave this house." "What?" Michael went pale. "Grandpa, you can't. This isn't my house. It's your mother's house. But I can assure you, if it were my decision, you'd already be on the street." My father stepped up to Michael until they were face to face. "Your mother gave you everything. She sacrificed for you your entire life, and you allow this woman to treat her like this. What kind of man have you become?" I saw the tears begin to roll down my son's cheeks. Michael wiped his tears with the back of his hand, but they kept falling. I saw him standing there, between his grandfather and his wife, and for the first time in a long time, I recognized the boy he had been. The boy who cried when he hurt someone by accident, who said he was sorry when he broke something, who hugged me tight when I came home tired from work. Where had that boy gone? "I'm sorry, Mom," he said in a broken voice. "I don't know what I was thinking. I never should have let this happen." Chloe grabbed his arm abruptly. "Now you're going to blame me for everything? You're the one who told me your mom wouldn't notice, that she had plenty and wouldn't mind sharing." The words fell like bombs in the room. We all froze. Michael turned white, paler than he already was. My mother gasped. My father closed his eyes, shaking his head, and I felt as if a knife had been plunged into my chest. "You told her that?" I asked my son, feeling my voice break. "You told her I wouldn't notice? That I had plenty?" Michael opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His face was the perfect picture of guilt and horror, realizing that Chloe had just completely betrayed him. "Michael, I asked you a question." My voice sounded strange even to me, as if it were coming from far away. "Did you tell your wife to take my food?" It wasn't exactly like that. She told me her parents had nothing to eat, and Answer the question," my father interrupted, his voice like ice. "Did you give her permission to empty your mother's refrigerator?" Michael covered his face with his hands. "I thought she was just going to take a few things. I didn't know she was going to take everything. I swear, Mom, I didn't know." "But you told her to do it while I was sleeping," I said, and every word hurt as it came out. "You told her I had plenty, that I wouldn't mind. I was trying to help her family. They really are going through a bad time and what about me?" I shouted for the first time, letting out all the accumulated rage and pain. "Don't I matter? Don't my sacrifices matter? I work night shifts at my age. My whole body aches. I can barely sleep. And I do it for you two, so you have a roof, so you don't lack for anything." The tears were streaming down my face. My mother came over and hugged me, and I collapsed into her arms like a little girl. "It's okay, honey, it's okay," she whispered, stroking my hair. "It's okay." But I couldn't be okay. All the pain of the last 2 years was coming out at once. All the times I had stayed silent, swallowed humiliations, allowed disrespect, thinking I was being a good mother-in-law, a good mother. It all came out now in sobs I couldn't control. My father approached Michael. He didn't touch him. He just stood in front of him with that imposing presence he still had at 92. "Your mother was left alone when you were 5 years old," he said in a grave voice. "Your father left and never came back, and she, instead of giving up, instead of leaving you with your grandparents while she looked for an easier life, she stayed with you. She worked 2 jobs for years. I watched her come home so tired she could barely walk, but she always had a smile for you. Always." Michael was crying openly now, but my father wasn't finished. "She paid for your school, your clothes, your outings with friends. When you got sick, she stayed up all night caring for you. When you had problems, she solved them. And when you grew up and brought this woman into her house, she welcomed you both with open arms. She gave you a roof without asking for anything in return, and this is how you repay her." "Grandpa, No. You've spoken enough. Now it's my turn." My father took another step closer. "You are going to do exactly what I told you. You are going to go to your wife's parents' house and get back everything they took. You are going to apologize to your mother. And then you are going to decide if you want to be the man your mother deserves, or if you want to continue being the coward who lets his own mother be mistreated. Chloe, who had been quiet after her blunder, found her voice again. Mr. Arthur, with all due respect, I think you're exaggerating. It was just food. I didn't kill anyone. My father turned to her with a look that would have frozen the Sunday. You be quiet. You've done enough damage. You can't talk to me like that. This isn't your house. You're right. It's my daughter's house. And if she'll allow me, I'm going to do something I should have done a long time ago. He turned to me. Irene, do you want this woman to continue living in your house? I pulled away from my mother's embrace and looked at Chloe. I truly saw her for the first time in a long time. I saw the arrogance in her posture, the barely hidden contempt in her eyes, the total lack of remorse in her expression. And I knew the answer. No, I said, my voice firm despite the tears. I don't. Perfect. My father looked at Michael. You have two choices. You leave with her, or you stay and prove that you still have some dignity left in you. But she is leaving. Now. You can't just kick me out. Chloe raised her voice. I have rights. I live here. You have no rights, my father replied. This house is in Irene's name. You live here because of her generosity, a generosity you just destroyed. So take your empty bags and get out of this house before I call the police. The police? For what? For theft. You entered this house and took property that wasn't yours without permission. That is theft. I may be 92, but I still know how to read the law. Chloe looked at Michael in desperation. Are you going to let him talk to me like that? Are you just going to let him kick me out? Michael was paralyzed, looking from the floor to his wife, to me, to his grandfather. I saw the internal battle on his face. The part of him that knew this was all his fault, that he had allowed and participated in the humiliation of his own mother, and the part of him that didn't want to lose his wife, that didn't want to admit he had chosen poorly. Michael, I said softly, I need you to make a decision, and I need you to make it now. He looked at me, his eyes red and swollen. Mom, I love you. I've always loved you. But Chloe is my wife. I can't just... Then go with her, I said, and the words hurt me more than I ever thought anything could. If you choose to stay with someone who disrespected me this way, if you choose to defend her after what she did, then you can't stay here. You're kicking me out. I'm giving you a choice. Stay and be the son I raised, the good man I always thought you were, or leave with her and accept the consequences of your decision. Michael looked at Chloe. She was looking at him with those big eyes, with that perfected victim expression, and I saw the exact moment he made his decision. I'm sorry, Mom, he whispered, but she's my wife. I can't leave her. I felt as if something inside me had broken for good. My mother squeezed my hand. My father shook his head, his expression one of profound disappointment. Then pack your things, I said in a monotone voice. Both of you, and get out of my house. Chloe opened her mouth to protest, but my father took a step toward her, and she immediately fell silent. Michael, his shoulders slumped and his face streaked with tears, walked toward their room. Chloe followed him, but not before shooting me a look of pure hatred. I sat down on the sofa, feeling completely empty. My mother sat next to me, putting her arm around my shoulders. My father remained standing, watching the hallway like a sentinel, making sure they were actually packing. You did the right thing, honey, my mother said softly. It doesn't feel right, I answered in a broken voice. It feels like I just lost my son. You didn't lose him. He lost himself. But maybe this will help him find himself again. We heard noises from the room. Drawers opening, things being thrown into suitcases. The minutes passed like hours. I heard every sound coming from Michael's room, the rustle of clothes being folded hastily, the zipping of suitcases, the tense, whispered voices between him and Chloe. My mother didn't let go of me, and I clung to her hand as if it were the only thing holding me up. My father continued his watch from his post by the hall, arms crossed, jaw tight. How long have they been living here? My mother asked in a low voice. 2 years, I replied. 2 whole years. And they never paid rent? Never contributed anything? I shook my head. At first, They said they were saving for their apartment. Then there was always an excuse. Michael needed to replace his car. Chloe had to buy clothes for work. Their phone broke. Always something. My mother sighed deeply. You gave them too much, Irene. You gave them so much that they forgot the value of things. She was right. I knew it. I had been so permissive, so understanding, so willing to help that I ended up raising an adult son who thought he was entitled to everything, who thought he could take whatever he wanted from my house without consequences. The bedroom door opened and Michael came out, dragging 2 large suitcases. Chloe followed behind with a backpack and several bags. Neither of them would look me in the eye. They stopped in the living room, the suitcases between them and us, like a physical barrier of everything that had been broken. We're done, Michael said in a dull voice. We packed everything. My father walked over and checked the bags Chloe was carrying. She protested, but he ignored her completely. From one of the bags, he pulled out my bottle of expensive perfume, the one a friend had given me years ago that I only used on special occasions. He also found 2 of my silk scarves, a book I was reading, and a framed photograph of Michael as a child. This stays, my father said, putting everything on the dining room table. You're not taking anything that isn't yours. Chloe pressed her lips together but said nothing. Michael stared at the floor as if he wished it would swallow him. My father checked the other bag and also pulled out one of my jackets and a set of keys I had been looking for weeks. Anything else you want to confess before I check the suitcases? My father asked in a stern tone. No, Chloe muttered. Good. My father stepped aside. Then you can go. Michael finally looked at me. His eyes were red and his face swollen from crying. He took a step toward me, but my father stopped him with a hand on his chest. Your mother gave you a chance to do the right thing. You wasted it. Now leave. I just want to say something, Michael pleaded. My father looked at me, asking with his eyes if I wanted to hear it. Part of me wanted them gone, out of my house and out of my life. But another part, the part that was still his mother, needed to hear what he had to say. It's okay, I said weakly. My father stepped aside, and Michael approached. He knelt in front of me, taking my hands in his. They were cold and trembling. Mom, I know I ruined everything. I know there's no excuse for what I did, for what I allowed. You're right about everything. I gave you everything and I repaid you in the worst way. Tears streamed down his face. But you're my mom. I can't just leave like this and never see you again. You should have thought of that before, I said, trying to keep my voice steady even though I was falling apart inside. I know, and I hate myself for it. I hate myself for being so blind, so selfish. I hate myself for hurting you. He wiped his face on his sleeve. Is there any way I can fix this? Any way you can forgive me? I looked at my son, my only son, the baby I had held in my arms, the boy who had made me laugh with his antics, the young man who had made me proud when he finished school. But I also saw the man who had chosen his wife over me, who had allowed me to be robbed, who had participated in my humiliation. I don't know, Michael, I answered honestly. I don't know if I can forgive this. Not now. Maybe someday, but not now. You hurt me in a way I don't know will ever heal. He nodded, tears falling onto our joined hands. I understand and I accept it. I just want you to know that I love you. I've always loved you. And I'm going to find a way to show you that I can be better. That I can be the son you deserve. Then show me, I said. But not here. Not now. Go, Michael. Go and think about what you did. Think about what you really want in your life. He kissed my hands and stood up slowly. He walked to the suitcases. He took one in each hand. Chloe was already by the door, impatient, phone in hand, probably calling a taxi. Where are you going to go? My mother asked, with genuine concern despite everything. To my parents' house, Chloe answered without looking at her. They'll welcome us with open arms, without giving us conditions. Open arms that you fed with my daughter's stolen food, my father retorted sharply. Chloe didn't reply. The door opened and a taxi pulled up in front of the building. Michael loaded the suitcases into the car. Chloe got out first, without saying goodbye, without looking back. Michael stopped on the threshold and looked at me one last time. "I love you, Mom," he said in a broken voice. "I love you too," I replied, because it was the truth. Loving him and being disappointed in him weren't mutually exclusive, but that doesn't change what happened. He nodded and left. I watched from the window as he got into the taxi, as the car pulled away down the street until it disappeared around the corner. And then, only then, did I let myself truly cry. I collapsed on the sofa and cried as I hadn't cried in years. I cried for my son who had chosen poorly, for the 2 years I had wasted allowing abuse, for the stolen food, for the betrayal, for everything. My mother held me tight, letting me cry on her shoulder like I was a child. My father sat on the other side, placing his large hand on my back. They didn't say anything. They didn't need to. Their presence was enough. I don't know how long I cried. Eventually, the tears ran out, and all that was left was a profound exhaustion that reached my bones. I stayed there, between my parents, feeling their warmth, their unconditional love. "We're going to stay with you for a few days," my mother said finally. "We're not going to leave you alone right now." "You don't have to do that," I protested weakly. "It's not a question, honey. It's a fact." My father stood up and went to the bags they had brought. "Eleanor, where did you put the cheese and bread?" "In that green bag." My father brought the bag over and started taking things out. Cheeses from their town, freshly baked bread, a jar of homemade jam, another of honey, cookies wrapped in wax paper. My mother got up and went to the kitchen. "I'm going to make you some tea," she said. "And we're going to eat something. You haven't eaten all day." "I'm not hungry," I said. "Irene, it doesn't matter. You're going to eat anyway." She had that voice that brooked no argument, the same one she used when I was a child and didn't want to eat my vegetables. My father sat next to me again. "Do you know what tomorrow is?" I shook my head. The days had become a blur. "Saturday. The farmer's market is open." He took my hand. "Tomorrow morning, the 3 of us are going. We're going to buy everything you need to fill that refrigerator. Meats, vegetables, fruit, everything. And I'm paying." I don't want to hear an argument. "Dad, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. You're my daughter, and you just went through something terrible. Let me take care of you like I did when you were little." I nodded, too tired to argue. My mother returned with 3 cups of steaming tea and a plate of bread and cheese. She made me eat, even though every bite felt like sand in my mouth. But it was good. The bread was fresh, and the cheese had that homemade flavor you can't find in any supermarket. That night, I slept in my bed for the first time in a long time without hearing noises in the house. Without the late-night laughter from Michael and Chloe. Without the sound of the TV on until the early morning. Without the whispered arguments that sometimes filtered through the walls. Just silence. A silence that should have felt peaceful, but instead made me feel empty. I woke up several times during the night. Each time, I'd stare at the ceiling in the dark and remember what had happened. The image of Michael walking out the door with his suitcases replayed in my mind over and over. I wondered where he was sleeping, if he was regretful, if Chloe was filling his head with justifications. I wondered if I had done the right thing. By 6 o'clock in the morning, I couldn't stay in bed any longer. I got up quietly, trying not to make noise and wake my parents, who were sleeping in the guest room. I went to the kitchen to make coffee. When I opened the empty refrigerator, the reality hit me again. But this time, I didn't cry. I had no tears left. I made coffee in the old coffee pot that had belonged to my grandmother. The smell filled the kitchen and brought back memories of when I was a child, of mornings in my parents' house where everything was simple and safe. I was taking the first sip when I heard footsteps behind me. "You're up early," my father said, walking into the kitchen already dressed and combed as if it were 2 o'clock in the afternoon and not 6 in the morning. "I couldn't sleep much," I admitted. He poured himself a cup of coffee and sat across from me at the table. For a moment, he said nothing. He just drank his coffee and looked at me with those eyes that had always been able to see right through me. "You're doubting what you did?" he finally asked. "I don't know. Maybe. He's my son, Dad. My only son. And you're his mother. The mother who sacrificed everything for him. The mother who deserved respect and loyalty." My father put his cup down. "Irene, Do you know what my biggest mistake as a father was? I looked at him, surprised. My father never talked about mistakes. He was a man of certainties, of firm decisions. I didn't prepare you to say no. I taught you to be generous, to help, to give. But I never taught you that it's also okay to set boundaries, that it's also okay to protect yourself. He sighed deeply. And look where that got you. Working night shifts at 69 while your son and his wife lived for free in your house. Getting your refrigerator emptied while you slept. I chose to help them, I said weakly. There's a difference between helping and allowing abuse. You crossed that line a long time ago, and they took advantage of it. He leaned forward. What you did yesterday was hard. It was painful. But it was necessary. Michael needed to learn that actions have consequences, and you needed to get your dignity back. His words hung in the air. Dignity. When had I lost my dignity? Was it the first time Chloe took my shampoo without asking? Or when Michael didn't defend me the first time she disrespected me? Or maybe it had been long before that, when I agreed to let them live in my house without setting clear rules from the beginning? My mother came into the kitchen in her pink robe, her hair in a messy bun. Good morning. Already drinking coffee without me? We saved you some, I said with a small smile. She poured her cup and sat with us. For a while, the three of us drank coffee in silence. It was a comfortable, familiar silence. The kind of silence you can only have with people who know you completely and love you anyway. Ready to go to the market? My mother asked after finishing her coffee. I don't know if I have the energy to go out. That's exactly why you have to go out. You're not going to stay cooped up in here ruminating on what happened. My mother stood up with determination. Go take a shower and get dressed. We are going to fill that refrigerator, and then we are going to make a delicious lunch, just like in the old days. I didn't have the strength to argue. I showered, got dressed in comfortable pants and an olive green blouse I hadn't worn in years. When I came out, my parents were already waiting for me by the door. The market was half an hour away. During the drive, my mother told me stories about their town, about the neighbors, about the small, everyday things that suddenly seemed infinitely more valuable than before. My father drove in silence, but every so often, he'd look at me in the rearview mirror and give me a small smile. The market was a colorful, noisy place. Stalls of fresh fruits and vegetables, meats hanging on hooks, fish on ice, fresh baked bread. Vendors shouted their deals, people haggled over prices, children ran between the stalls. There was life there, movement, energy. My father grabbed a cart, and my mother took my arm. We're going to buy everything you need. And no, I'm not taking no for an answer. We walked down the aisles. My mother picked out vegetables, touching them to check for freshness, smelling the fruit. My father stopped at the meat counter and started talking to the butcher like they were old friends. He bought ribs, steaks, a whole chicken, ground beef, more than I could eat in a month. Dad, that's too much, I protested. It's not too much. You'll cook, you'll freeze, you'll have your fridge full, as it should be. He pointed to some sausages, and some of these too. I know you like them. We kept shopping. Different kinds of cheeses, yogurt, milk, eggs, butter. At the bakery, my mother bought 3 different types of bread. At the spice stall, she bought all my favorite herbs. At the sweets aisle, she bought chocolates and cookies. I'm not going to be able to eat all this, I said, looking at the cart, which was already overflowing. You don't have to eat it all by yourself, my mother said with a mysterious smile. You're going to have visitors. Visitors? Us. We're going to come more often. Once a month, at least, and we'll bring you things from town every time. I felt tears sting my eyes again. But this time, they were different tears. Not of pain, but of gratitude. You don't have to do that. Yes, we do. We've been too absent. We left you alone here in the city, busy with our own things in town, assuming you were fine because Michael was with you. My mother squeezed my arm. But now we see we left you very alone. And that's going to change. We finished shopping, and my father paid for everything. It was over $300 in groceries. When I tried to give him money, he gave me that severe look that meant the topic was not up for negotiation. On the way home, the car was full of bags that smelled like fresh bread and herbs. My mother was humming an old song. My father whistled softly. And I, for the first time in a long time, felt something like peace. We got home, and the three of us started putting everything away. The refrigerator, which had been painfully empty, now looked full of color and possibility. The meats in the freezer, the vegetables in the drawers, the cheeses and cold cuts in their place. My mother organized everything with military efficiency, while my father and I passed her the items. "There," my mother said when we finished, closing the refrigerator door with satisfaction. As it should be. I looked at the full fridge and felt something loosen in my chest. It was just food, just ingredients. But it represented something more. It represented that I wasn't alone, that I had people who loved me and were looking out for me, that I was worth taking care of. "Now," my father said, rubbing his hands together, "what are we going to make for lunch?" "I thought we could make that stew you taught me." "Mom," I said. "The one with the ribs and vegetables." Perfect. My mother was already getting out a large pot. "Arthur, peel the potatoes. Irene, you cut the carrots. We're going to cook as a family." And that's what we did. The three of us in the kitchen, chopping vegetables, browning meat, mixing spices. My father told stories from when he was young. My mother laughed at his exaggerations. I let myself be present in the moment, without thinking about Michael, without thinking about what I had lost. The aroma of the stew filled the whole house. It was a homey, comforting smell. The kind of smell that makes you feel like everything will eventually be okay. We ate at the dining room table, the three of us together, like we hadn't done since I was young and still lived with them. The stew was delicious, the vegetables soft, the meat falling off the bone. We talked about simple things. The weather, the neighbors in town, the flowers my mother was growing in her garden. No one mentioned Michael. It was as if we had made a silent pact to give my wounded heart a rest, even if just for a few hours. After lunch, my father fell asleep on the sofa with the newspaper over his chest. My mother and I washed the dishes together, in that synchronized rhythm that only comes from years of doing things together. She washed, I dried, just like when I was a girl. "You know what hurts the most?" I said suddenly, breaking the silence. "It's not just what he did. It's realizing that I lost him a long time ago, and I just didn't want to see it." My mother stopped washing and looked at me. "What do you mean?" "Michael changed when he met Chloe. At first, I thought it was normal, that he was in love, that he was prioritizing his wife. But it wasn't just that. I put the dish towel on the counter. He stopped visiting me when he still lived alone. He stopped calling me to tell me how he was doing. He stopped asking how I was. And when they finally came to live here, I thought I would get him back. But it was worse. He was physically present, but emotionally absent. "Some men get lost in their relationships," my mother said softly, "especially with manipulative women who know how to isolate them from their family." "Do you think Chloe manipulated him?" "I think she saw a man who loved his mother very much and saw a threat. So, little by little, she created distance, making him believe you were demanding, that you asked for too much, that she was the victim." My mother went back to washing the dishes. "I've seen it before. Women who can't stand their husbands, having strong bonds with other people, not even their own mothers." I thought about all the times Chloe had rolled her eyes when I spoke, how she would interrupt when Michael and I were having a conversation, how she always had a sarcastic comment about my things, my house, my way of doing things. It had been there from the beginning, that slow poison destroying the relationship with my son. "Do you think he'll ever realize it?" I asked. "Maybe. Or maybe not. But that's not up to you, Irene. You did what you had to do. Now he has to decide what kind of man he wants to be." We finished the dishes. My mother made more tea, and we sat at the kitchen table. Outside, it was starting to get dark. It had been a long, emotionally exhausting day, but also healing in a way. "Can I ask you something?" I said after a while. "Anything, honey. Did you ever regret anything you did with Dad, or with me when I was a girl?" My mother thought for a moment. "I regret not being firmer sometimes. Your father was very strict with you when you were a teenager. I tried to be the mediator, the one who smoothed things over. But sometimes I think I should have told him he was going too far, that he was being too hard. Dad just wanted to protect me. I know. But love can also suffocate if you're not careful. Just like generosity can turn into permissiveness, she looked me right in the eye. You loved Michael so much that you gave him everything. And in the process, you taught him that he didn't have to earn anything, that everything would just come to him. Her words hurt because they were true. It had been so easy to give Michael everything. After his father left us, I had wanted to compensate for that absence by being both parents, by being everything for him. And along the way, I had spoiled him without realizing it. How do I fix that now? I asked. You don't. That's his job. You can only work on yourself, on learning to set boundaries, on valuing yourself. My mother took my hand, and on forgiving yourself for not being perfect. No mother is. That night, my parents and I watched an old movie on TV. A romantic comedy, one of those I'd seen 1,000 times, but that was still comforting. My father fell asleep halfway through, snoring softly. My mother and I huddled under the same blanket and finished the movie together. When we all went to bed, I checked my phone for the first time all day. I had 5 missed calls from Michael and several text messages. I read them with a pounding heart. Mom, please pick up. I need to talk to you. I'm so sorry. Please give me a chance to explain. Are you okay? I'm worried that you're not answering. I love you. Please don't hate me. I stared at the messages for a long time. Part of me wanted to reply. I wanted to tell him I was okay, that I didn't hate him. But another part knew that responding now would send the wrong message, that I was still willing to give in, to forgive without any real change. I turned off the phone without replying. The next few days passed in a quiet routine. My parents stayed the whole week. My father fixed small things around the house that had been broken for months: a dripping faucet, a squeaking door, a window that wouldn't close properly. My mother cooked, cleaned, and filled the house with the smells and sounds that made it feel like a real home. I took the week off from work. I told my boss I had a family emergency, and she, bless her heart, didn't ask questions. I needed that time to process, to heal, to remember who I was beyond being Michael's mother. One afternoon, while my parents were at the grocery store, I heard a knock on the door. My heart sped up. Was it Michael? I looked through the peephole and saw Fernando, my next-door neighbor. He was a man in his 70s, a widower for 3 years. He had always been kind, polite, but we'd never had much interaction beyond hellos in the hallway. I opened the door. Hello, Fernando. Hello, Irene. Sorry to bother you. He was holding a glass container. I made vegetable soup and ended up with way too much. I thought maybe you'd like some. I was surprised by the gesture. Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you. I noticed your parents are visiting, he said with a shy smile. I saw them the other day when they were heading out. You look a lot like them. Yes, they came to spend a few days with me. There was an awkward silence. Fernando seemed to want to say something else, but was hesitant. Finally, he spoke. I saw Michael and his wife leave with suitcases the other day. I hope everything is all right. So the neighbors had seen. Of course they had. In this building, everyone noticed everything. We had some disagreements, I said simply. They decided to go live somewhere else. Fernando nodded with understanding. He didn't ask any more questions, which I appreciated. Well, if you need anything at all, I'm right next door. Don't hesitate to knock. Thank you, Fernando. That's very kind of you. He left, and I stood there with the container of soup in my hands. It was a small, simple gesture, but it touched me deeply. Human warmth with no strings attached, no expectations. That night, I heated up the soup for dinner. It was delicious, full of fresh vegetables and herbs. My father asked who had made it, and when I told him, he exchanged a look with my mother. What? I asked. Nothing, my mother said with a smile. Just that this Fernando seems like a very thoughtful man. Mom, please. It was just a neighborly gesture. Of course, just that. But her smile said she thought otherwise. Sunday morning, my parents packed their things to go back to their town. I didn't want them to leave. The house had felt alive with them there, full of voices and laughter, and the sound of shared life. But I knew they had to go back. They had their own things, their own routine, their own home. We're not leaving forever, my mother reminded me as she folded her clothes. We'll be back next month, and you can come to town whenever you want. The house is always open for you. I know. It's just, I got used to having you here. My father came into the room with his suitcase. Irene, I want you to promise me something. What is it? That you'll take care of yourself. That you won't ever again let anyone treat you the way you were treated. Not Michael, not Chloe, not anyone. He put his hands on my shoulders. You are 69 years old. You've worked your whole life. You deserve peace. You deserve respect. And you deserve to be happy. I'll try, I said, my voice trembling. Don't try. Do it. He kissed my forehead. And if Michael comes back, if he asks for forgiveness, don't take him back unless you see real change. Not words, actions. Do you understand me? I nodded. I understand. I walked them down to the car. My mother hugged me for a long time, whispering in my ear. You're stronger than you think, honey. You always have been. I watched them drive away from the building entrance, my father's car disappearing down the street until I couldn't see it anymore. I stood there, feeling the morning sun on my face, the cool air filling my lungs. The house would be empty when I went back up. Truly empty for the first time in 2 years. But it was a different kind of empty. It wasn't the emptiness of loss. It was the emptiness of possibility. I walked slowly up the stairs. When I opened the door to my apartment, the silence greeted me. But it wasn't a heavy or sad silence. It was a clean silence, like a blank page waiting to be written on. I walked through each room, seeing it with new eyes. The living room where I had spent so many nights alone while Michael and Chloe were locked in their room. The kitchen where I had cooked for them, without so much as a thank you most of the time. The room that had been Michael's, now empty except for the bed and the closet. It didn't smell like them anymore. It smelled clean, like a new beginning. I sat in my favorite armchair by the window and took out my phone. I had more messages from Michael. The last ones were from last night. Mom, Chloe and I had a huge fight. She went to her parents' house. I'm alone in a hotel. I've realized a lot of things. You were right about everything. Can we please talk? Please. I stared at the messages for a long time. Part of me wanted to reply immediately. I wanted to run to wherever he was and hug him and tell him everything would be okay. But my father's voice echoed in my head. Not words, actions. Instead of replying to Michael, I opened a new message and wrote to my boss. Is that day supervisor position you mentioned a few months ago still available? I'd like to apply. I sent the message before I could change my mind. I had turned down that position when it was offered because it paid a little less than the night shift, and at the time I needed every extra cent to support 3 people. But now, it was just me. I could afford to earn a little less in exchange for not destroying my body with hours that weren't meant for someone my age. My boss replied within minutes. Of course, we can meet tomorrow to discuss the details. I smiled. It was a small step, but it was a step forward. The following days, I established a new routine. I woke up early, made my coffee, and ate breakfast slowly while reading the newspaper. Then I'd go for a walk in the park near the house, something I hadn't done in years because I was always too tired. I went to the market and bought only what I needed, without thinking about extra mouths to feed. I cooked for myself meals that I liked, without worrying about anyone else's tastes. Fernando started greeting me when he saw me in the hallway. Sometimes he'd bring little things, a magazine he thought I'd like, flowers from his small balcony garden, once a dessert he'd bought that was too much for just him. They were simple gestures, without pressure, without expectations, and I appreciated them more than I could express. One afternoon, 3 weeks after Michael had left, I was making dinner when I heard a knock. I looked through the peephole, and my heart stopped. It was Michael, but he looked different, thinner, with deep dark circles under his eyes, his hair unkempt. He was holding a bouquet of flowers in one hand and nothing else. I took a deep breath before opening the door. Michael. Mom. His voice broke immediately. Please, can I come in, just for a few minutes? I hesitated, but something in his expression, in the way his shoulders were slumped, made me step aside. He walked in slowly, as if afraid I'd change my mind. He just stood in the middle of the living room, looking around. The house looks different. It's cleaner, without all the clutter, I said, and I couldn't help the sharp edge in my voice. He flinched at my words. I deserve that. I deserve that and so much more. He held out the flowers. I know flowers don't fix anything, but I wanted to bring you something. I took the flowers without a word and went to put them in a vase with water. When I came back to the living room, Michael was still standing in the same spot, hands in his pockets, head down. "Where is Chloe?" I asked. "I don't know. With her parents, I guess. We split up for good a week ago." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. You were right about her. About everything." He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "After we left, I started to see things I had ignored. The way she talked about you when you weren't around, how she laughed at your things, how she planned what else we could take from your house. And I just went along with it, Mom. I just played along because it was easier than confronting her." "Michael." "No, let me finish. Please." He took a deep breath. "I was a coward, a horrible son. I used you. I let her use you. And the worst part is, I justified it all in my head. I told myself you had more resources, that you could handle it, that it wasn't a big deal. But it was a big deal. It was terrible." Tears were rolling down his face now. "When we got to Chloe's parents' house with all that food, they didn't understand where so much came from. She lied to them. She told them you had given it to us as a gift. And I didn't correct her. I let them think you were just being generous when you had actually been robbed." I sat down on the sofa, feeling like my legs wouldn't hold me much longer. Michael sat on the floor in front of me, just like he used to when he was a kid, and had something important to tell me. After the fight with Grandpa, after leaving here, something in me just broke. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I couldn't stop thinking about your face when you saw the empty refrigerator, about how betrayed you must have felt. He covered his face with his hands. I started going to therapy. I needed to understand how I had become that person, how I had prioritized someone who made me worse over someone who had always given me everything. "You're in therapy?" I asked, surprised. "Twice a week, and I'm living alone, in a tiny apartment I can barely afford, working extra hours to cover all my expenses." He looked at me, his eyes red and swollen. "I didn't come to ask for money. I didn't come to ask you to let me come back. I just came to tell you I'm sorry. I'm sorrier than words can express." We sat in silence. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, filling the room with a soft, golden light. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet," I finally said, my voice soft. "I know, and I'm not asking you to. I just want you to know that I'm working on being better, on being the son you deserved from the beginning. Actions speak louder than words, Michael. I know. That's why I'm not going to ask you for anything. I'm not going to pressure you. Just, can I call you? Every once in a while? Can I tell you how I'm doing? You don't have to answer. Just, let me try to rebuild this. Even if it's just a little at a time." I looked at my son. I saw the broken man who had allowed the worst of himself to win. But I also saw the boy he had been, the young man who'd had dreams, the person he could still be if he truly chose to change. "You can call," I said. "But Michael, if you let me down again." "I won't. I promise you." He stood up to leave. At the door, he stopped and looked at me one last time. "I love you, Mom, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving I deserve your love back." When he left, I sat on the sofa, looking at the flowers he had brought. They were white daisies, my favorites. The fact that he remembered meant something. I didn't forgive him, not completely, but it meant that maybe, just maybe, there was hope. That night, as I was making dinner, I heard another knock. It was Fernando, with a shy smile. "I made too much again. Beef stew. Would you like to share? I could bring it over, or, if you'd prefer, you can come over to my place. I have a small balcony where we can eat and watch the sunset." I looked at this kind man, this neighbor who didn't really know me but who had shown more consideration in a few weeks than others had in years. "I'd love that," I said. "Give me 5 minutes to change." We ate on his balcony, talking about things both simple and deep. About loss and new beginnings. About loneliness and companionship. About how life can surprise you when you least expect it. The sunset painted the sky orange and pink, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Happiness isn't in loud words or empty promises. It's in the people who stay by your side in silence, in the hands that take care of you without asking for anything in return, in the respect that doesn't need to be demanded because it's given naturally. I learned that setting boundaries isn't cruelty, it's self-love, and that sometimes losing someone is the only way to find yourself. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I smiled. I was 69 years old, and I was starting over. And this time, I was going to do it on my own terms.